Good afternoon to all my dear swearers and all the other viewers who are watching this program. I welcome you to yet another episode of English Doctor. And I'm Gowri Saraswatul, and the subject that we're going to deal with today is subject-verb agreement. I'm sure all of you know that in an English sentence, a subject is the most important element, isn't it? So, the subject-verb agreement as a concept of grammar means that if a subject is singular, then the verb all of you know what a verb is. The verb is the action that the subject does in a sentence. So, if the subject is a singular subject, then the verb also must be a singular. For example, a boy plays cricket, a girl watches TV, or you can even say the boys play cricket and girls watch TV. Okay, so as you can see from the example, a fish swims, because fish here is being used as a singular, a fish swims. But the next sentence, which is birds fly, means birds, there are a lot of birds, there's not just one bird, so the birds fly. And before we go into the subject-verb agreement and the situations and the scope of confusion that this particular concept offers in day-to-day speech, let us understand one thing, that the subject-verb agreement is in force in the simple present tense and present perfect tense and the present continuous tense. In the past tense, however, you don't have to really bother about the subject being a singular or a plural. Okay. Now let us go deep into this concept. Okay. So like I said, the verb is an action that the subject does, and subject is always a noun, right? So it is very important for us to recognize the subject in a sentence. So a sentence is constructed because there is a need to talk about a particular action that a noun performed or something that happened to the noun. So the subject of a sentence is always a noun, all right? So when a particular sentence has more than one noun, that is when we get confused, because we do not know if we have to use the verb in singular or plural. Now what is this singular verb, plural verb? How can an action word be a singular or plural? Now my friends, please remember that the verb cannot stand on its own unless it is being mentioned as something that is done by a subject or something that happened to the subject. So we all know that the verb is conjugated, or the verb is formed in 5 different categories: the V1, V2, V3, V4 and V5. Now the V5 particularly is the singular verb, and the amusing aspect is that in the V5 the verb always ends with S. That is why we say a fish swims. We don't say a fish swim, right? But in subject, that is the noun, what happens? The noun takes on S only in its plural form. And that is the main reason for all this confusion about subjects and verbs, all right? So please remember that the V5 of any verb will always end with S, and it is particularly used for a singular subject, all right? Singular subject, verb ends with S. Plural subject, the verb does not end with S, all right? There you use the infinitive or the base form of the verb. So it becomes very important to identify the subject in a sentence. So when you look at a sentence, you need to identify the subject. And in a sentence, if there are more than one nouns, then usually the first noun will be the subject. Now it can join with the other nouns, or it can be an independent noun, but the first noun usually is the subject, and the verb that is used for this subject has to conform or has to agree with this subject. This is clear so far? Okay, now let us look at the scope for confusion that exists. We notice that all most of us at least, have major confusion. Most of us don't even realize that we are abusing or misusing the subject-verb agreement. So we end up using a plural verb for a singular subject, or vice versa, you know, a singular verb for a plural subject. So today I'm here to present some situations where there is a scope for confusion, and I'll try my best to clear this confusion. All right, so let's proceed. Now, the first situation that I'm dealing with is when a subject comes after the verb. As you can see in the example, the underlined part is the verb. Okay, that verb is for the word mistakes. All right, so the subject is spelling mistakes. The subject is not the sentence. So you say there are spelling mistakes in the sentence, not there is a spelling mistakes in the sentence. All right, because spelling mistakes is the subject of this particular sentence. Now look at the other example that I have given. The book with many pages is called a tome. Now what is the subject of this sentence? The book. That's right, yes, not pages. Pages is plural, of course, but where are these pages? These pages are in the book, and the book is a singular. So you say the book with many pages is called a tome. Okay, have you heard that word tome? Tome is what we call a big or a huge book, like, you know, some versions of the dictionary, they have several pages, at least 1,000 pages, so that's called a tome. All right, now let us look at the last example in this set. The missing pages of the book are under the table. Now the subject, the focus of the sentence shifts to the missing pages, which is in plural. So you say the missing pages of the book. The book is a singular, but why are we making up this sentence? To identify or to indicate the location of the pages. All right, the pages that were plucked out of the book, the missing pages of the book are under the table. So the missing pages is a plural, and so you use the plural verb are. Is this clear? So this is one scope, one situation where you could get confused and use the verb interchangeably. Okay. Now if you have any questions on the subject-verb agreement, I request you to please call and clarify. I will be very happy to clear whatever confusion you may have. Let us look at the second scenario. Now, the confusing situation number 2 is when indefinite pronouns are used. Okay? Now, these indefinite pronouns depend on the context. Some of them are used always in singular. That means you need to use a singular verb for these indefinite pronouns. Now, let us look at neither nor. We know that it is an idiom, neither nor, and they are to be used together usually. All right. Okay. So now you look at the context of the first sentence. We say neither the students nor the teacher is here. Why are we saying is here? Because teacher is a singular. All right. Now I know I'm going against what I mentioned earlier, that the first noun is the subject, but here the noun that is closest to the verb is a singular. All right. So neither the students nor the teacher is here. But the same sentence, if you turn it around and use the teacher first, then you use are, as is demonstrated in the second sentence. Neither the teacher nor the students are here. Why? Because students is a plural. So you need to use the plural verb. Now, if you can look at, and there is also a lot of confusion because some nouns which are countable and uncountable, for uncountable nouns, what is the verb that we have to use? Because most of them are used in the context of a singular noun. All right. For instance, take bread. Okay, bread is an uncountable noun. Okay, so when you use bread by itself, the word bread by itself in a sentence, you automatically apply the singular verb. But if you are using, let's say, slices of bread, okay, now the slices is a plural, slices is a countable noun and it is plural. So if you can see in the example, it is all of the bread slices are buttered. It's not is buttered. Otherwise, you can say all the bread is buttered. But here you are using the units or the independent pieces of the bread. So all the bread slices are buttered. None of the slices. Now you see this? None. None is always a singular. None means not one. All right? So when you say not one, it has to be a singular. So none of the slices is buttered. You can't say are. That means there are several pieces or slices of bread, and one of them or none of them, that means not even one slice of bread is toasted or buttered or whatever. Okay? So none of them is toasted. So it is not are. What is the difference? None of them, not one of the bread slices, of the several bread slices is toasted. You get it? So this is where the usual confusion happens when we use a particular noun with of. Okay? So let us look at some more examples in this set. Okay. All of the cake is not eaten. All of the cake, because cake again is an uncountable noun. So you say all of the cake is not eaten. Some is also used with cake. Okay, some of the cake is left over. Here the subject is very, very clearly cake. Okay, not pieces of cake or not slices of cake. It is cake, and cake is uncountable. All right. Now you might be wondering, how do we know which noun is countable and which is uncountable? So there are some thumb rules that are there in the grammar that will help you remember or distinguish between the countable and uncountable nouns. All right. Now all the food items that you know, that means the food stuff, let's take rice, wheat, sugar, oil, bread, cake, all of these are always used with a singular verb because they all have the status of singular. Even though there is a lot of rice. Do you say there are a lot of rice? Let's say all the sweros, you must be having your food in the mess of your school or college. Now you see that they use these huge utensils to cook food. All right. Now let's say there is a big utensil in which the rice is cooked. So do you say there is a lot of rice, or do you say there are a lot of rice? There is a lot of rice, isn't it? That is because rice, no matter what the quantity it is cooked in or it exists in, is always used as a singular because it is uncountable. Okay. Now if you say there is enough rice to serve 10 people, so we can serve them 10 plates of rice. The plates of rice are on the table. You follow the string of logic? Okay. The plates of rice are on the table. So what is the subject here? Is it rice or the plates that contain rice? Plates, isn't it? So plates is a plural, and so you say are. You get it? So please do not get confused. Let me give you another example. Let's say I have a lot of money. Do you say I have many money? You don't say that, right? You say I have a lot of money. But if you say that I have a lot of rupees, then you will be wrong, because money is an uncountable noun, but rupees are not uncountable. Rupees are the units of the Indian currency, and they are very much countable. So are dollars and yen and pounds and dirhams, or whatever units of currency are there in different countries. So they are all countable. So you say I have many rupees. You don't say I have a lot of rupees. But if you say I have many money, then you will be wrong. I have a lot of money. No, I don't have, but it's just an example. So I have a lot of money and I have many rupees. All right, is this clear? Okay. So now let us look at the confusing situation number 3. What is this? Usually, if a sentence is very simple, let's say a sentence is just subject and the verb and the object, all right? I have money. I have a lot of money. Now, if I have to use a third person singular, then I say he has a lot of money. I don't say he have. Why? Because has is it is the helping verb for this singular subject. All right? He has a lot of money. So it's a simple, straightforward sentence. Now, remember, the longer a sentence is, okay, the more there is a scope for confusion. So when you have a sentence that is separated by several words, that means the subject of the sentence and the verb, if they are separated by several words, then even that situation, there is a scope for a lot of confusion, as is demonstrated in this example. Subject separated by several words. Now you look at this. My father, along with his friends and cousins, has gone fishing. So who is the subject of this sentence? Who has gone fishing? Primarily, if I say along with his friends has gone fishing, it doesn't make any sense, does it? But if I say my father has gone fishing, it makes a lot of sense. So what is that? Along with his friends and cousins is just an addition to the sentence, which is enhancing the meaning of that particular sentence, all right? But it still doesn't mean that friends and cousins become the subject. The subject very strictly remains my father. Because my father is a singular, you have to use a singular verb for it. My father, along with his friends and cousins, has gone fishing. So normally we hear people saying, my father along with his friends and cousins have gone fishing. We get tempted to use the plural verb have, because we feel that there are two plural nouns in the sentence, friends and cousins. So we feel compelled to use the plural verb, which is wrong. My father along with his friends and cousins has gone fishing. Okay? Who has gone fishing? My father primarily, all right? He took along his friends and cousins. Okay? Now, if you look at the next sentence, it says, the athletes along with their coach have gone on a trekking trip. Now, you know that athletes is a plural, isn't it? So, the athletes along with their coach. Coach is a singular, but because the subject of this sentence is athletes, you have to use have. The athletes along with their coach have gone on a trekking trip. Okay? Now, you look at the next situation, and here I have mentioned a few words that are always used in singular, and my friends, these are the words that confuse the heck out of us each time, every time we use them. These are the words that confuse, so we don't know, we get all lost. We use a singular noun and a plural verb, or a plural noun and a singular verb. So please understand that there are some words that are always used in singular. What are those words? Words that end with one, like one, third person singular. One must believe, one always thinks what he says or does is right. You notice, one always thinks what he says or does is right. So you notice that I have used the verb all in singular forms. Okay? Can we look at the slide, please? Yes. So the slide. Yes. Each, everyone, someone, anyone. So these are the words that are always used as a singular. Okay? Everyone means everyone. Something, everything, anything. Somebody, everybody, anybody. Neither nor, either or. So these, whenever you use these words, please understand that the verb must always be singular, except there are some exceptions, of course, with neither nor, either or. Let's not go into them. They can confuse you a little bit at this point in time. Okay? So let us look at the usage of these words. What is the usage? Everyone, including the patients and nurses, is waiting for the doctor. Okay? You notice is, We're not saying are, because there are a lot of patients, there are a lot of nurses, and there are a lot of other people. All of them collectively are waiting for the doctor. But when you use everyone, not all, everyone, you have to use is waiting for the doctor. Everyone, including the patients and the nurses, is waiting for the doctor. Let's look at the second example in this set. Each of the patients comes with a different problem. That means, let us say there are 10 patients. Each of them, that is every one of those 10 patients, has a problem that is his or her own. Each of the patients comes, not come, with a different problem. All right. Now let's look at the next sentence. Nobody knows where the treasure is hidden, but everybody thinks that somebody has the key. We're not saying nobody know where the treasure is hidden, but everybody think that somebody have the key. We're not saying that, because that is wrong. Nobody is a singular. That means not even one person knows where the treasure is hidden, but everybody, that means each and every one of them, thinks that somebody has the key. All right. Now you look at the third example. This is with thing, the words that end with thing. If everything goes according to the plan, then nothing goes wrong unless something doesn't go right. Okay. This sentence is also an example of how you can use informal language in speech. Okay. If everything goes according to the plan, then nothing goes wrong. So these are words that are often used together. If everything goes according to the plan, okay, and then nothing goes wrong. Something goes wrong. Something doesn't go wrong. Something goes right. All right. So these are the usages. If everything goes according to the plan, then nothing goes wrong unless something doesn't go right. Doesn't go. We're not saying something don't go right. Okay. So my friends, words that have one in them, everyone, okay, someone, anyone, something, everything, anything, somebody, anybody, everybody, each, these are always to be used with a plural, singular verb. All right. Now let us look at the fourth kind of situation where the subject, or let's say there are in a sentence there are more than one subject. Is that possible? Yes, very much so. It is very possible. So let us look at the sentences. Subjects separated by and. So we all know that what kind of word is and? And is a conjunction. That's right. And is a conjunction. So what is the function of a conjunction? It has to bring either two parts of a sentence together or two sentences together and make it one sentence, make it one long sentence. Okay. So basically it's a joining word, and that is why it is called a conjunction. Now in a sentence, if there are two subjects, okay, and they are separated by and, then that is when again we get confused. So let's look at a sentence now. Subjects separated by and. The old guitar in the corner and the new keyboard next to it. That means there is an old guitar in the corner and then there is a new keyboard right next to the guitar. Okay? The old guitar in the corner and the new keyboard next to it. Is it a singular or a plural? Plural, isn't it? Why? Because there is a guitar and there is a keyboard. Now both of them belong to me. I'm not saying they belongs to me. Is it correct to say they belongs to me? No, because there are two things that belong to me there. So it is essentially a plural. The old guitar in the corner and the new keyboard belong to me. They are mine. I'm not saying they is mine. Okay? I'm not saying the old guitar in the corner and the new keyboard, it is mine. No, that is wrong. So you say the old guitar in the corner and the new keyboard next to it are mine, or you can say they belong to me. Now look at the word family. Family your family might be comprising of a lot of members. You know, in the Indian context, usually we have large families. We have our immediate parents and siblings, and then we have the grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins. So we usually have large families. But no matter how many members are there in your family, when you talk about your family, when you use the word family, you have to always use the singular verb for the family. Okay? You don't say my family are quite large. You say my family is quite large, or my family is quite big. All right? So let's look at the example with family now. Okay? My family and my friends are important to me. Confusing, isn't it? I just said family has to be used in singular, but now I'm showing you a sentence that has are, which is a plural verb. Why? Yes, because I'm not just talking about my family. I'm talking about my family and my friends. So they become two entities. So they are plural. My family and my friends are important to me. Both are important to me. So that is how you can avoid the confusion. If there are words that have to be used together, the nouns that have to be used together, and if they're both of similar kind, then, and they're separated with and, then you can very well use, you have to use the plural verb. Okay? Now let's look at the last sentence in this lot. The elders as well as the youngsters have appreciated the film. Okay? Is there any such film in the recent past that was appreciated by both the elders and the youngsters? Yes, yes, you know the film that I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about films, my friends. So let us go into the topic of our discussion today, or my presentation today, which is subject and verb agreement. Now, let us look at another situation. I know that most of you are very good with your grammar. You can identify the nouns. You know that there are collective nouns. What are collective nouns? A very fascinating concept, isn't it? Collective nouns are a lot of units of the same kind that are usually indicated by just one word. Okay? And let us say, let me take the word fleet. Okay? You familiar with this word, fleet? F-L-E-E-T, fleet. Now, what is a fleet? Fleet is a lot of vehicles together. Now, those vehicles can be airplanes. So, you use a fleet of airplanes. Or the fleet can be cars, you know, a fleet of cars, a fleet of buses. All right? So, a fleet is a collective noun. Now, in that fleet, just like in family, where you have a lot of members, in a fleet, there can be a lot of vehicles, but it is a collective noun. So, it has to be used in a singular. So, the fleet of cars that this particular man owns is huge or large. He owns a big fleet of cars. You're not saying he owns big fleets of cars. That is a different situation altogether. But you're not saying his fleet of cars are large. You're saying his fleet of cars is large. All right? So that is a collective noun. Now let's look at the examples for collective nouns. What are the words that are usually used in singular form, being collective nouns? Like I said, family, committee, and group. There are, of course, a lot of words. I'm not saying these are the only words that enjoy the status of a singular verb being collective nouns. But now you look at the example, the entire family stays together. Like I said, we have this tradition of having very large families. At least we keep going to our families during our vacation. We go to our native villages and cities, and then we find that in the same house, in our ancestral house, in our family house, a lot of members of our family stay together, right? Yes? But our family stays together. You understand the difference? Members of family stay together. The family stays together, all right, because family is a singular noun. Even though there are a lot of people in that family, when you say my family is big, my family stays together, not stay together, all right. Now, the last example in this set, the last sentence in this set, the committee appointed by the government has investigated the matter thoroughly. The committee appointed. So the committee is what? The committee is a few people, at least more than one, two people, yeah? So the committee appointed by the government has investigated the matter thoroughly, has investigated, not have investigated. And the group of singers is touring Europe currently. The group of tourists. Who is touring? The group. What does that group comprise of? It comprises of singers. So the group of singers is touring Europe currently. All right? Is this clear so far? All right. Now let us look at the next situation. What is the situation? Using plural subject in a collective noun. That means, when do you use the plural subject in a collective noun? Like I said, see, the members of the group have resigned. Now the group definitely, no doubt, is a collective noun, and so it has to be used with a singular. But here, what is the subject? Remember what I told you in the beginning? That you need to identify the subject of the sentence first and then use the verb accordingly. So here the subject is the members. Who resigned? You can say the entire group has resigned, but now you are mentioning members specifically, which is a countable noun, and so you say the members of the group have resigned. Similarly, the participants of this team are disqualified. You can say the entire team is disqualified. Then you use is. Why? Because team is a collective noun and it has to be used with a singular verb. But here you are using participants. The participants of this team are disqualified. You get it? Do you understand the concept? Now you see another example. The judges in the committee disagree with one another. We are not saying they disagrees, right? We are saying the judges in the committee disagree with one another. That means there are 3-4 judges in that committee and they disagree with one another. Now when I am talking about one another, my friends, let me also give you let me take a slight detour and let's talk about one another and each other. I'm sure all of you know that you use each other when there are only two people, all right? So let's say if I say the judges in the committee disagree with each other, then it is definitely implied that there are only two judges in the committee. But if I say the judges in the committee are, or judges in the committee disagree with one another, so one another means that there are more than two judges in the committee. One another, each other, all right? This concept, I mean, I'm just calling your attention to this concept. I'm sure most of you know this concept. Knowing the concept of the grammar is one thing, my friends, all right? Because we pick up these concepts from the books that we have in our syllabus, and also out of our own interest, we might study some books. Knowing the concept of the grammar is one thing, but applying those concepts in our day-to-day language, whether we use them in our spoken language or in the written language, that is what is important. So we are right now focusing on the functionality of grammar in our communication when we use English, right? So functional grammar definitely is much more important than the structural grammar, all right? I'm not saying structural grammar is not, that's the basis, so that is important, but what becomes more important is applying the structural grammar in our day-to-day use, thereby turning it or transforming it into functional grammar. All right, now let's look at another set of examples in the topic that we're discussing, which is subject-verb agreement. Now when a subject is separated by a phrase, earlier we've discussed when a subject is separated by several words, all right? Now I'm giving you a clear-cut example of a phrase. You look at the example, the bangle seller with several colorful wares and different sizes, okay, is here. So the subject of the sentence is strictly the bangle seller, isn't it? Now the bangle seller with several colorful wares and different sizes, they are not the subject. Who is the subject? Who is here? The bangle seller is here. So because the bangle seller is a singular, we're not saying sellers, we're saying seller. So the bangle seller with several colorful wares and different sizes is here. Okay, and then you say a flock of birds. Remember the collective words that we're talking about? A flock of birds alights on the tree in my backyard every evening, and they all belong to different species. Now, who is this they? You see how the focus is shifting from the flock to they? A flock of birds. A flock is a collective noun, so I have used the singular verb, which is alights. Alights, you know, what do the birds do? Birds fly, and when they want to land, that is what we call, right, alighting. Alighting is to sit on a branch or on a high post or whatever, alight. A flock of birds alights on the tree in my backyard every evening, and they, what is they? Birds. They all belong to different species. So normally I should, if I have to continue with the meaning or the sentiment of a flock, then I say a flock of birds alights on the tree in my backyard every evening, and it has several species of birds, right? But here I have shifted the focus from a flock to the birds, and that is why I have used the plural pronoun they. Now when I say they, I can't say belongs, right? So how, you notice how the focus is shifted from the flock to the birds. A flock of birds alights on the tree in my backyard every evening, and they all belong to different species. So it's not that I have a lot of birds belonging to one species. No, I have a lot of birds belonging to different species, like parrots and crows and you know, sparrows, whatever species of birds that are commonly found. Okay, so I'm saying that a flock of birds has, or yeah, I can even say has. I'm not saying have. A flock of birds alights on the tree in my backyard every evening, and they belong to different species. Okay, so now I know it tends to get very confusing. It tends to get very frustrating at times, because when we speak and we don't realize we do a mistake, we're happy. Yes? But when we speak with a doubt in our minds that maybe whatever I'm speaking is not correct grammatically, maybe I'm making a mistake, then we become very, very conscious. And that consciousness will breed more mistakes. That means it will bring out more mistakes. It is your nervousness that makes you commit a lot of mistakes. Conceptually, I have immense faith in your knowledge. I know all of you have a lot of knowledge of grammar. But when it comes to the application part, like I mentioned earlier, because you feel that you don't know enough to speak accurately without mistakes, you become conscious, and because of that consciousness, you end up making more mistakes than you intended to make. So my friends, please have a lot of clarity in your mind about what you know. What you don't know, you can always learn. But at least what you know, if you are very clear about what you know, then that clarity will help you apply the knowledge in your day-to-day usage of language. Is that okay, my friends? Okay, so let us focus on using the concepts that we know rather than knowing a lot of concepts. All right? So one particular example that I wanted to give you, or one situation that I wanted to discuss in this episode is, I have often found a lot of my students using this expression, all of, one of, some of, none of. All right? Now, when you use anything with this one preposition called of, then you have to be very careful. All, of, one, of. All we know is a plural word. So all of the students know English. I'm not saying all of the students knows English. That means, let us say there are 10 students. All of them, that means all 10 of them know English. So it's a plural verb. All of the students know English. Okay? One of the students speaks fluently. Now, because one is a singular, okay, I have used, or we have to use, the singular verb, which is speaks. I'm not saying one of them speak fluently. This is a very common mistake that we do, my friends. And then you look at the word some. Some of them, I'm sorry, I think it's a typographical error there. Some of them have strong vocabulary. Now here again you notice I'm using a plural verb, not a singular verb. I'm not saying some of them has. If I'm saying someone, then I have to say has. But now I'm saying some. Some means a few. All right? Some of them have strong vocabulary, but none of them hesitates to speak English. None again is a singular, and you say none of them hesitates to speak English. And one of my friends lives nearby, not one of my friends live nearby. This, as I told you earlier also, is the most common mistake that most of us make. So please be aware of this. The subject, if it is a singular, then the verb has to be a singular. The subject, if it is a plural, the verb has to be a plural. All right, friends, is this clear? Okay. Now, I wanted to give you insight into another concept here, that is using several subject words. Okay, if you are using more than one subject, then please understand, if you are using them for the same action, then you have to consider it as a plural. Okay, all right. So if you have any questions or doubts, I would be very willing to tackle them. Otherwise, this brings us to the end of this episode, my friends. I'm sure you have gained a lot of inputs today in the form of examples that I have given, and I'm sure you will be able to apply them and not commit these blunders, these mistakes with subject-verb agreement. Thank you very much.